Billionaire catches homeless boy dancing with his paralyzed daughter. A barefoot, hungry boy slipped through the gates of a mansion and saw the billionaire's daughter sitting in silence, her face clouded with sadness. Then he did something no one expected. He began to dance, not for money, not for food, but simply to make her smile. What happened next would change all of their lives forever. Richard Lawson was one of the wealthiest men in the city. His empire spanned oil, real estate, and shipping, earning him the nickname, the Golden Touch, because everything he invested in turned to success. Yet behind the high walls of his Banana Island mansion, his greatest struggle was not business. It was the silence of a daughter whose laughter he longed to hear again. His only daughter, Amanda, once a bright, lively 8-year-old, had been left paralyzed after the tragic car accident that also claimed the life of his beloved wife, Elizabeth. Once, her laughter rang through the house like music. Once, she ran through the gardens chasing butterflies. But now, she sat quietly in her wheelchair, staring out the window. Her spirit dimmed. At first, Richard tried to fight it with his wealth. He flew her to India for surgery, to Germany for therapy, to the US for advanced treatment. Every attempt ended in the same crushing disappointment. Amanda's smile faded. Her laughter disappeared. She rarely left her room except when her nanny rolled her into the garden. Richard, though proud and cold before the world, felt his heart breaking each day. He saw her staring blankly into the distance. But one hot afternoon, something unexpected happened. Amanda sat quietly in the garden, her eyes fixed on the gate beyond, lost in thought. She noticed movement in the corner of her eye. A boy, barefoot and ragged, slipped quietly through a small space by the hedge. His shirt was torn, his shorts too big for his thin frame. His hair was messy, his knees bruised from life on the streets. But when he looked at Amanda, his eyes sparkled with mischief. Then, without a word, he began to dance. Not a professional dance, not the kind you saw in videos or on TV. His steps were exaggerated and funny. His arms swung like a clown's, his body twisting and spinning in ways that made him look ridiculous. At first, Amanda just blinked. Then a small giggle escaped her lips. The boy made his eyes wide and pretended to slip, catching himself dramatically. Amanda clapped her hands, and then, like a miracle, she laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh or a forced giggle. It was pure, unrestrained laughter that echoed across the compound. The boy grinned and danced harder, spinning, hopping, rolling on the grass like a performer on stage. Amanda's laughter grew louder. His name was Cola. At least, that's the name he gave when people asked. Nobody knew his full story because he rarely spoke about it. What people in the neighborhood did know was that Cola had no home. Some nights he slept under the bridge near the bus park. Other nights he found corners of unfinished buildings where he could hide. He had no parents anyone had seen, no siblings, and no bed except the hard concrete floor. Cola had one thing that kept him alive, his joy. When hunger was strong and sleep would not come, he danced. When drivers shouted at him for begging at the traffic lights, he danced. He danced for strangers on the street, and sometimes they gave him a few coins. Dancing made him feel alive. It gave him joy, even in his suffering. His movements were his voice, his shield, his way of escaping the pain of being unwanted. That afternoon, Cola was wandering past the millionaire's mansion. He peered through a small hole in the gate and saw Amanda sitting quietly nearby. Her small face rested on the arm of her wheelchair, her eyes fixed sadly on the ground. Something moved inside Cola. He thought, I know what sadness feels like, but if I dance for her, maybe I can make her smile. Maybe, just maybe, I can chase her sadness away. So Cola slipped quietly through the hedge and stepped into the garden. He began to dance, pulling silly faces and twisting his body in ridiculous, exaggerated moves. When Amanda laughed, it felt to him like a victory greater than finding food after a long day of hunger. Her laughter made his heart race. He danced harder, wilder, each clap and giggle from her giving him new energy. In those precious minutes, Cola forgot that he was barefoot, hungry, and without a home. He wasn't a beggar or a boy from the street. He was simply a child, bringing joy to another child. What Cola did not realize was that he wasn't only making Amanda laugh, he was changing her life, and his own, forever. Inside the mansion, Richard Lawson heard it. He froze. He hadn't heard that sound in months. He rushed to the balcony, expecting to see a miracle. And in a way, he did. His daughter was laughing, clapping, her eyes alive again. And the source of her joy was not medicine, not therapy, not money. It was a homeless boy, dancing barefoot in his compound. From the balcony, Richard Lawson's first reaction was anger. How had this ragged street boy entered his compound? Where were the guards? What if he was dangerous? Richard's fists clenched. He almost called out, ready to send the boy away immediately. But then he saw Amanda. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement. Her arms were moving, clapping with strength he hadn't seen in months. Her back, usually slouched, was upright, and her laughter, loud, uncontrolled, full of life, filled the air. Richard froze in his tracks. For months, he had spent millions chasing doctors and treatments, only to watch his daughter sink deeper into despair. Now, in less than 10 minutes, this barefoot boy had brought her back to life. Richard didn't understand it. He didn't trust it. But he couldn't deny what he was seeing. He hid behind one of the marble pillars of the mansion, watching silently. His chest tightened, not with anger this time, but with something he had almost forgotten. Hope. As the boy danced and Amanda clapped, Richard realized something shocking. This street boy was doing for his daughter what all his wealth could not. Cola came back the next afternoon, the same way he came the first time. Quiet, quick, and hopeful. He didn't sneak because he wanted to steal. He came because he now carried a small mission in his heart. Make Amanda laugh again. He had slept behind a kiosk the night before, stomach rumbling. But he woke up with a smile. He had found something bigger than hunger. Purpose. As he slipped through the hedge, he saw her waiting by the gate, eyes bright, hands already ready to clap. "Are you ready?" he asked, lifting his arms like a circus clown. Amanda giggled and nodded. Before he could start, Richard Lawson stepped out. For a second, Cola froze. He knew that look. Adult anger that comes before a beating or a boot on the road. He held his breath, prepared to run if he had to. Amanda's voice broke the tension. "Daddy, please don't send him away. Please." Richard studied the boy up close for the first time. The shirt was torn at the shoulder. The shorts hung on a waist too thin. The boy was barefoot with scars on his knees that told stories no child should have to tell. But his eyes were steady. Not arrogant, not weak, just steady. "What's your name?" Richard asked. "Cola," the boy replied. "Why did you come in here?" Cola swallowed. "I saw her. She looked sad the first day. I thought maybe if I danced, she would laugh. I didn't come to take anything, sir. I only came to give something small. I can leave after." The words were simple, but they sank into Richard like rain on dry earth. "Where do you stay?" Richard asked, softer now. "Anywhere," Cola said. "Bus park sometimes. I dance for small money. Sometimes I just dance for myself so hunger won't win." Amanda's eyes filled. "He makes me happy, Daddy." Richard glanced at his daughter. Her cheeks were glowing, her back straight. He noticed her toes shift. It might have been small, but it was a movement. Movement he hadn't seen in months. He took a breath. "Okay, you can stay. For today. In the open. Where I can see you. No misbehavior. Do you understand? Cola nodded quickly, relief washing over his face. He turned to Amanda with a grin. Showtime, he asked. She clapped, and just like that the garden became a stage again. 1 day turned into 3. 3 turned into a week. The guards were told not to stop the boy anymore. Let him in at 4 o'clock, Richard instructed. He leaves at 6. He eats before he goes. Cola arrived each day with new ideas. He danced like a spinning top. He told funny stories from the bus park. He acted out quarrels between Danfo drivers and their conductors. He made sound effects, fell dramatically, stood up grandly, bowed like a king, then crossed his eyes until Amanda's laughter shook her shoulders. But it wasn't just laughter. Something else was happening. Amanda's hands grew stronger from clapping. She started lifting her arms to copy Cola's moves. Her voice grew more confident. She told him, "Again! And no, do it like yesterday." She even tried to spin her wheelchair in small circles when he spun on the grass, and every small turn felt like victory. Richard watched all of this quietly. He noticed the little things. How Cola never asked for anything before performing. How he always checked Amanda's face before trying a joke. How he expected nothing but claps. Yet when food was offered, he ate gently, like someone who knew what it meant to eat once a day. In the evenings, after Cola left, Amanda spoke more than before. "Daddy, did you see the one where he pretended to be a police siren? Daddy, today I felt something in my toes. Daddy, can he come tomorrow?" The doctor examined her during a routine hospital visit and was surprised. "Her engagement is back," he said, looking at her closely. "This kind of motivation can spark recovery pathways we can't always explain. Whatever you're doing, keep it going. Keep it." That night, Richard stood alone in the garden, looking at the space where Cola danced. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude that didn't come from a bank transfer. He whispered into the warm air, "Thank you, boy." And though no one was there to hear it, the garden seemed to agree. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day when you don't expect miracles. The sun leaned low, the hedge threw soft shadows on the lawn, and a radio somewhere was playing an old highlife tune. Cola was mid-performance, doing his slow-motion dance, where he moved as if time had become thick and heavy. Amanda laughed so hard she forgot to hold her blanket in place. "Wait," she said, catching her breath. "Let me try something." She placed both hands on the armrests of her wheelchair. Her face tightened with effort. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then her shoulders rose, then her chest. Then slowly, her hips lifted an inch, then 2. She held, trembling, for 3 long counts. 1, Cola whispered, eyes wide. 2, Richard counted, stepping forward without realizing it. 3, Amanda breathed, before sinking back into the chair, panting and smiling, eyes wet. Silence fell over the garden. It was not the old silence, the heavy one. It was a holy silence, the kind that comes after a prayer is answered in a way you did not expect. Cola broke it with a shout. "You did it! You did it!" He spun 3 times and dropped to his knees beside her. "Champion!" Richard knelt on the other side, his hands shaking. He touched his daughter's forehead lightly. "You are brave," he said. "I am so proud of you." Amanda reached for both of them. One small hand for her father, one for her friend. "I'm not scared anymore," she said. "When he dances, I feel like I can move. They didn't tell the world, not yet. They didn't post it or call the newspapers. They simply kept going. More laughter, more practice, more tiny movements that added up to something big. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He walked the long hallways of his mansion, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. He thought of his daughter, her bright eyes when Cola entered, her stronger voice when she called out for him. Then he thought of his pride, his image, his name. It was a battle inside his chest, between pride and love, between what the world expected and what his heart was telling him. By dawn, Richard realized something. Reputation couldn't heal his daughter. Money hadn't saved her laughter. But Cola, a boy with nothing, had given Amanda hope. For the first time, Richard admitted to himself, maybe wealth isn't the highest power. Maybe kindness is. One Saturday afternoon, Richard called Cola to sit with him in the garden. For the first time, the boy wasn't asked to dance. He was asked to talk. "Tell me about yourself," Richard said. Cola hesitated. Nobody ever asked about him. People only saw his dirty clothes and waved him off. But Richard's eyes were serious, almost gentle. "I don't know where I was born," Cola began softly. "My mother died when I was little. My father left. Some women at the market gave me food sometimes, but when I got older they stopped. So I stayed with other boys at the bus station. We sleep under the bridge or in shops if they're empty." Richard listened, his chest tightening. "Why do you dance?" he asked. Cola smiled faintly. "When you're hungry, your body feels heavy. If you just sit, the hunger wins. But if you move, if you dance, it feels lighter. People laugh. Sometimes they give me coins, sometimes they don't. But at least I don't feel invisible." Richard nodded slowly. He had attended the best schools, eaten the finest meals, and traveled the world. Yet sitting in front of him was a boy who had learned life's deepest truth without any teacher. Joy is strength. "From today," Richard said firmly, "you are not invisible anymore. You are part of this house." Cola blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. But when Amanda wheeled herself closer and grabbed his hand, smiling wide, he realized he was no longer just a boy of the streets. He was becoming family. The true turning point came one afternoon that began like any other. The sun was warm, the flowers in the garden swayed gently, and Cola was doing his playful, robot dance, while Amanda clapped. "I want to try standing!" she shouted suddenly, surprising even herself. Cola stopped mid-move. "What?" "I mean it," she insisted, her voice strong. Richard, sitting nearby, tensed. He didn't want her to strain, but he also knew he couldn't hold her back. Amanda placed her hands on her wheelchair handles. Her arms shook, but she didn't stop. She pushed hard, her face scrunching in effort. Slowly, painfully, she rose. One knee trembled, then the other straightened slightly. She wasn't standing tall, but she was up, her feet pressing against the ground, her body upright for the first time since the accident. Richard's heart slammed in his chest. The guards at the gate froze. Even the housemaids gasped from a distance. Cola shouted with joy, spinning in circles before dropping to his knees. "You did it! You're standing, Amanda! You're standing!" Amanda held herself there for 3 seconds, her little body trembling like a leaf in the wind. Then she fell back gently into the chair. Instead of crying, she laughed. "I stood. Did you see me? Daddy, I stood." Richard knelt beside her, tears blurring his vision. He touched her trembling hands. "I saw, sweetheart, and I have never been prouder." That day the mansion was no longer silent. It roared with laughter, claps, and cheers. The turning point had come. And Richard knew it. His daughter's healing had begun. And it all started with a boy who once had nothing but a dance. That night, long after Amanda had fallen asleep, Richard sat in the quiet of his study. The papers on his desk were untouched. His phone buzzed with messages, but he ignored them. His mind was on one thing: Cola. For weeks the boy had brought life back to his daughter. She laughed again. She moved again. She lived again. And tonight, she had stood. Even if only for a few seconds, it was a miracle. Richard knew it was not luck. It was Cola. That night, Richard found Cola sitting quietly on the back steps, his arms wrapped around his knees, staring into the darkness as though unsure if he truly belonged there. Richard lowered himself beside him. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Richard said gently. Cola gave a small shrug. "I'm used to it, sir. Not anymore," Richard replied, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a promise. "This is your home now. You're part of this family. You'll eat 3 meals a day. You'll go to school. And you'll never again have to wonder where to lay your head." Cola's eyes widened, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Thank you, sir." Richard turned to face him fully, his own eyes glistening. "Listen to me, Cola. I know what you've given my daughter. You gave her something no money, no doctor, no medicine could provide. Hope. And anyone who gives hope is not just worth knowing. They are worth loving." For the first time in his life, Cola felt truly seen. His throat tightened and tears slipped down his cheeks. That night, he lay on a soft bed, safe under a roof, in a place he could finally call home. The cold concrete nights of the past were over. It didn't take long for the story to sweep across the city. A powerful millionaire had opened his doors to a boy from the streets. To some, it was an act of reckless sentiment. To others, it was the mark of true courage. The newspapers blazed with headlines. "Millionaire Lawson adopts street child. City divided between outrage and admiration." Some of Richard's business partners pulled him aside. "Richard, this will damage your reputation. A street boy in your mansion. What if he steals? What if he disgraces you? Think of your image." But Richard had changed. He no longer cared for shallow appearances. "My image?" he said calmly. "My daughter is standing again. My daughter is smiling again. That is the only image I care about." Amanda herself told anyone who questioned her. "Cola is my friend. He makes me strong. If you don't like him, you don't love me." The voices of doubt grew quieter, because while some mocked, many others admired. Neighbors whispered differently now. Imagine a boy from the street is helping Amanda walk again. Maybe kindness is richer than money, and in the middle of it all, Cola remained humble. He didn't care about newspapers or gossip. Every day he just danced. Every day he laughed with Amanda. Every day he gave his gift. The mansion that once echoed with silence was now filled with life. Mornings started with Amanda calling out for Cola. Afternoons were filled with laughter as he performed his silly routines. Evenings ended with shared meals, where Amanda teased her father for smiling more often than before. Slowly, Amanda's therapy improved. With Cola cheering beside her, she walked small steps, then longer ones. She still used her wheelchair at times, but fear no longer controlled her. She was living again. Richard, too, transformed. He was no longer just a millionaire chasing business deals. He was a father rediscovering joy. And with Cola, he found himself acting like a father again, guiding, teaching, protecting. One day Amanda looked at Cola and whispered, "Now I'm not alone anymore. I have a brother." Richard laughed, but inside his heart swelled with pride. For the first time in years, his house was no longer just a mansion. It was a home. One evening, as the sun painted the city sky in gold and crimson, Richard stood in the garden watching Amanda take careful steps, with Cola holding her hand. The sound of her laughter, mixed with Cola's playful shouts, filled the air. In that moment, Richard understood something he had never truly known. Money was useful, yes, but true wealth was not in bank accounts or business deals. True wealth was in the laughter of his daughter, in the courage of a boy who refused to be broken by the streets, in the love that bound them all together. He whispered to himself, "I thought I had everything, but I had nothing until I met this boy." From that day, Richard Lawson became known not just as a wealthy man, but as a man of heart. Cola was no longer the homeless boy. He was part of the Lawson family. And Amanda's story became a beacon of hope for families everywhere. That sometimes the cure we need does not come from medicine or money, but from love, kindness, and unexpected friendship. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to Folk Tales by Olivia for more emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable stories. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep watching.